As of Update 2, Payday 3 finally has its first addition to the skill pool in the form of the new skill line transporter. This one has been highly anticipated after it was first dangled like a carrot back when the servers weren't doing so hot, but regardless, contains a skill allowing players to do one of the most highly requested actions the franchise has ever seen: carry 2 bags at once. As such, it's automatically a fairly impactful addition to the game, so let's take a look at how the entire skill line stacks up, the nodes you probably want to avoid, how you can now build around a loot carrying playstyle, and the mechanics you need to be aware of as we find out if Transporter is worth your investment. Transporter is a 6-node skill line, making it roughly average compared to the lines that launch with the game. Its first self-titled skill grants or refreshes a stack of rush every time you pick up a bag or body. Like Gunslinger though, this one comes with a downside, as when that bag or body is thrown, the rush will be lost. Conceptually, this skill makes a lot of sense, as it's essentially designed as a method to speed you up by roughly 10% whenever you grab loot, the whole theme of the tree. The fact that it activates rush is an added bonus, as this can then be used to enable skills like battering ram in loud or social engineering in stealth. Seeing as this can be endlessly restacked by simply dropping and picking the bag up, this is probably second only to Gunslinger in terms of ease of activating trifecta skills, which is why the downside has undoubtedly been added. By deactivating the stack anytime you drop a bag, it makes this tree less splashable into any build that wants sustained access to rush, meaning you either have to put up with the bag on your back at all times, or find another source of rush within your build to compensate. I think this is conceptually fine, but I do worry that it's going to encourage some pretty derivative and degenerate strategies where people play around Transporter specifically by hogging loot and repeatedly throwing and catching it, instead of, trying to complete the objectives with it. This is fine on heists like Under the Surface, where you can just use non-loot bags like the Spectrophotometer, but I hate the idea of people expressly subverting the objective to make their personal build work. It's not exactly ideal for a co-op experience. This may be even worse when we account for the Ace version that has the exact same effect, just for stacks of grit instead. Unlike rush, grit is fairly tough to come by, so having such an easy replenishable source might be really tempting for you. Given it's conditional, I'd rather stick with Enforcer on most of my builds, as I hate the idea of having to micromanage a stat that's more pivotal to me than rush, which I just view as a nice bonus. But I can see players flocking to Transporter Aced as the new easiest way to activate grit now, to make use of Plate Up, probably the best skill in the game seeing as it's been fixed and Armor Up has been nerfed. As I say, conceptually, these skills make a lot of sense for an objective-minded playstyle. Grab the loot, move faster and take less damage. It sounds perfectly supportive. I just don't anticipate that's how most of the community are going to leverage it, but I've been wrong before. In the second node, we have Beast of Burden, which allows you to circumvent the movement speed penalties of carrying bodies and loot, so long as you have rush, which you will of course always have when initially carrying thanks to base Transporter. I don't find those penalties to be that extreme when carrying single bags regularly, but this skill is extra useful for when quickly moving bodies in stealth, and also synergizes with Powerlifter, this line's key skill I'll be discussing in just a moment. Continuing from left to right, Brutal Carry is next, which enables you to immediately intimidate civs and employees to the ground if they witness you carrying a body. This is predominantly a stealth skill, although I can see some application for manipulator builds who want to quickly control highly populated areas, such as on No Rest for the Wicked or Golden Shark. To be frank, it's not often that you want to intimidate multiple civs at once, but there are a few specific instances where this could be very useful in stealth, such as in No Rest for the Wicked, where Brutal Carry is excellent for controlling the office room. To me though, whilst this still ticks some big boxes from a Wolf role-playing perspective, it's a little too situational to recommend for most builds. Generally, I'd say this one is a skip, especially as it requires grit to activate, which is sort of forcing you to ace out Transporter, pushing it to a 2 skill point cost for not all that much. Next up, we have Deep Pockets, probably the largest outlier skill in this line. Simply, it grants you an additional deployable bag at the start of the heist, but each bag you drop carries 2 less charges. This means that it won't work with sentry guns, unfortunately, but probably for good reason, and that you can now bring a maximum of 8 equipment charges on a heist instead of 6. It also means you can spread out your resource usage, making them less likely to be dissolved by cloakers, and prevent as much backtracking. Doing so costs an investment of 4 skill points, but from a pure team play perspective, it's probably worth it, and seems likely to become a component of the new meta build. Another skill that might be edging its way into the meta is Powerlifter. This is the skill, enabling you to carry 2 bags at once at the cost of a fair movement penalty. Except keep in mind, with Beast of Burden and Rush stacks, those bags should be just as weightless, meaning you can freely carry 2 bags at the same time at maximum speed. This skill isn't essential, let me make that clear. It shouldn't get in the way of your core build concept or come at the cost of survivability. Better slower and out of custody than fast and dead. But if you can make room for it, it's about as top tier a utility skill as you can find in the game at the moment. Bearing in mind every single heist barring maybe touch the sky is extremely loot bag heavy. What I would say though is for a solo only player, it becomes even higher value. Halving the number of runbacks you need to do in loud or stealth is a massive deal and will be making its way directly into every one of my challenge run builds, I suspect. The final skill in this tree, Catapult, simply allows you to throw bags 30% further and exists as a pure utility flex option, taking up a similar slot to other mastery node skills such as Swift, Sprint Loaded and Speed Aim. It certainly has its application on particularly bag-heavy heists, but isn't specifically necessary on any build. Coupled with movement techs like the momentum and vaulting throw, you can get some serious airtime on bags now, but honestly these techniques alone are often enough. Amusingly, it actually has counter synergy with its own tree, as you're punished for throwing bags by Transporter, which is this skill's entire purpose. I'd say splash it into builds that have spare points, as it's almost always somewhat useful, but certainly not a game changer. Overall, I'd say Transporter is one of the strongest standalone skill trees in the game, up there with Tank, Mower and Hacker. If you focus on the bag strategy, it opens up some massive synergy options and contains two fairly core skills that will be useful on just about any build you create. It's also the first skill line that has pretty much equal usage for both stealth and loud gameplay, with true hybrid application, and I anticipate any serious stealth build will be investing at least 3 points into the tree from now on. It's absolutely a top tier line that will be found in and around the best meta builds, so get to researching and unlocking these skills as soon as possible. As I've already mentioned, I do think it's a shame that you have to pick up a skill with inherent downsides to gain access to the rest of the line, but for almost every build in the game, those downsides are negligible compared to the potential upside of skills like Deep Pockets and Powerlifter. This is an S tier skill line that will absolutely shake up the way the game is played. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed all of my coverage of Update 2. Getting early access to the build really helps when it comes to creating this sort of in-depth content for its launch, so I am grateful to the Starbreeze partner program for that. I've thoroughly enjoyed playing this update, so I'm hugely excited to see how everyone else feels about it now it's live to all. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and tell me how you're making use of Transporter in your builds. Take care, I'll see you all very soon. A huge thank you to my dedicated Patreon backers. If you want to join this crew in going infamous, check out the link below and pledge as little as $2 to see your name in the credits, or get 24-hour early access to future videos and vote on upcoming content. Take care, I'll see you all soon.